Welcome back, everybody. This is WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. We're all getting you set as Temple opens their basketball season in Annapolis, Maryland on Friday night as they play on the number one team in the country, the UNC Tar Heels. Now joining us in the studio is a man that's Temple made and Temple proud, played with Coach Chaney at Temple University, then went on to the NBA from 1994 to 2007, won the Sixth Man of the Year. We all know his credentials, and that's Aaron McKie, who joins us right now in studio. Coach, great to see you again. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. So this is now your second year in the job as an assistant coach for Temple Athletics. You coached on the pro levels as an assistant coach with the Sixers for a bunch of years. How are you different last year to this year when it comes to the college front of being an assistant coach?
Well, I think I'm still trying to learn this college game a little bit. I think I'm a little more prepared in terms of, recruiting and where to go and what to do and what to say. I'm still learning the rules of the college game, which is, it's a book about that thick. And you have to be aware of all of those things. And, when you're in the pro coaching, professional basketball, it's just all basketball. You come in and you do your deal, you do your work, and then you're out of there. But with college, you got to make sure guys are going to class and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then on top of that, you got to get out there and recruit.
You guys, when you were in the NIT, you experienced that 30-second shot clock. That was one of the rule changes they made. So you guys had that experience before, but how does a 30-second shot clock change the game of basketball?
I think it's going to give more possessions. I don't really think it's going to change much. I don't, a lot of teams in college like to run motion offense and move the ball side to side as, in the professional ranks, guys, teams try to get the ball down and score right away. But I don't see it as being a big change. I think it's, they're promoting more offense with college basketball, and you're probably going to see a lot of fouls being called. You're probably going to see a lot more scores in the 80s and the 90s in the college game. And I think the way they see it, it's a more exciting brand of basketball. But on the flip side of it, you get a bad dose of basketball because you have bad players taking bad shots.
I know last year you guys were upset that you didn't make the NCAA tournament. I was about to FedEx my glasses to Scott Barnes and that selection committee because it was an absolutely complete joke with their explanation that Temple didn't pass the eye test. But your team, they really went out there in the NIT and they were playing with the message to prove. Mm-hmm. Did you at all still sense that hunger in the summer of your kids getting denied from the NCAA tournament last year? Did you feel that in the gym in the summer?
Yeah, it was just leading up to Selection Sunday. We all sat in the locker room with the coach. Coach Dunphy didn't sit in. He just kind of walked around the gym and, was pacing around. And we sat in the locker room in the practice facility. And once the show started, it was a lot of excitement in the room. And guys, you could just see it in their eyes. And, as the show went on, as it progressed, and we just, didn't see our name called, and it just got quiet and more quiet. And then you can hear pin drop in there, and it's just like somebody just let the air out of it. But the beauty about the guys that we have competitors, and when we were selected to play in the NIT, those guys were ready to go. They could have easily laid down and said, we don't care too much about playing in this tournament. They felt like they had something to prove, and it carried over through the summer. Guys worked really hard, and I'm looking forward to this year. We have a young, talented team, and I think, we got an opportunity to do some good things, but it's going to take us some time to, put things together. But I think, with that bad taste that was left in our mouth last year, I think our guys are ready to hit the ground running this year.
I think in one of those NIT games, it was a weird start. It was 11 a.m. start, and I would have understood if you guys came down and you didn't give your best effort, but you had good leadership last year. Will Cummings wasn't going to let his senior season end in disappointment, and he went out there and got to the Final Four of the NIT where you guys lost to Miami. This year, though, Cummings isn't here. Jesse Morgan isn't here. You're a young team, like you mentioned. Jalen Bond was named team captain. He's one of the veteran guys here that has been here for a few years, although he hasn't been necessarily playing all those years. What kind of leader is Jalen Bond that you see in practice?
He's been fantastic, and I always tell him, being a leader doesn't necessarily mean you have to be vocal all the time. Sometimes you can lead by example, and I think he's doing a pretty good job of that. He takes care of his business in the classroom. He's, the guy in the weight room working all the time. He's practicing hard all the time, and he does a really good job of leading by example, and we're trying to get him to be a little bit more vocal out there and teaching and helping the young guys come along.
Who are some of those other guys that you've been impressed with? Because the leadership can't just be on one player. Who are some other players that you've been impressed with?
I think Josh Brown has been has been fantastic for us. He does a really good job of, again, he's a guy that's always prepared. He worked really hard this summer and worked on some things, and we're just trying to get him to look at basketball from the mind part of it. Basketball to me is not always the physical part of it, but you got to be able to think the game a lot better, and I think he's getting better at doing that. I think Devin Coleman and Quentin DeCozy is helping our guys out, our young guys out. So Mark Williams, all the guys on the team are playing a part, and then we want to try to do it, have leadership by committee. We leaned on Will Cummings a lot last year, and he did a really good job, for us and helping our guys out, and now we're looking for our guys to do it by committee this year.
Obi's a real special talent, and he's a guy that's going to see an increase in minutes this year. Mm-hmm. Bond and Obi playing together. We got to see a little bit of it at the end of the year. How will they coexist together on the court?
Well, I think Jalen is more of an inside presence. He brings the physicality to the game, banger. Obi is, he could play inside as well, but he shoots the ball really well. For his size, I think he'll have advantages every night where, with his size, if he has smaller players playing against him, he can, play with his back to the basket or face up and put it on the floor and get a shot. And if he's playing against bigger guys that can't, move as well out on the perimeter, we can spread him out. And, like I said, he's a pretty good jump shooter. So I think those guys, they work well together. And we want to get Obi to be dominant inside. And when I say dominant inside, on the defensive glass and being able to guard his position, and we want him to be able to crash the board. We think he has just a natural gift and of athleticism where we can use that on both ends of the court.
You're going to need some consistent scorers when you lose guys like Will Cummings and Jesse Morgan. Can Quentin DeCozy be that guy? Is he a guy that really wants it? Because he's been inconsistent throughout his career here at Temple.
I'm hoping so. He's been working really hard at it. We had a couple scrimmages. He's been shooting the ball pretty good, and hopefully that carries over to, the regular season. We're going to need it from him, quite honestly. With losing Will, with losing Jesse, that's, 28, 29 points that we lose, offensively. And not only that, those guys could guard their position. Will did a really good job for us defensively. Jesse did a really good job defensively. So, we went into every game feeling comfortable out on the perimeter with, those guys being able to guard their position. So we're going to need not only DeCozy to score the ball for us, but we're going to need him to guard his position as well.
As a coach, how do you challenge a player like that for him to have consistent efforts? Because he's shown a lot of stretches in his career where he could go out there and score 18, 20 points, but then he just doesn't do it over a stretch of multiple games.
Yeah, you challenge him, but I think it's something that has to be inside of you. You can only go so far with being able to challenge them, but at some point they have to be willing to embrace that challenge. And I think he's willing to embrace that challenge. And I look forward to seeing him, step out on the court Friday, especially starting off with UNC with North Carolina. I think this will be a really good test for us early on.
The most intriguing part of this team for me is going to be the young guys because you're going to need them this year. Yeah. What stands out to you about the young guys that you brought in?
They play with poise. I really like, where they're at right now in terms of thinking the game and their feel for the game. You would like to give them a little bit more time to, figure things out. And I think the tough part for those guys is they're, really light in stature will be the physicality of the game coming from high school and going into college. But, they have some advantages and they have some disadvantages with their game. And that's to be continued. As the season goes on, we'll be able to see where they're deficient at, and we can help them. But I'm really looking forward to seeing those guys play. They've been playing really well for us, and obviously there's some things that they have to get better at, out on the court. But I look forward to seeing those guys play and compete because they do it day in and day out.
Recruiting is such a difficult process, and it's one that takes a long time, and you build really good relationships. Out of those 4 guys that you brought in this year, does anyone come in here and you are really impressed with them and say, wow, this guy's better than I thought he was?
No, I think that's the intention. When you bring guys in, you see some things, and I think a lot of times as coaches we will nitpick at the things that they don't do well. But as long as your positives outweigh your negatives, then you got a really good talent to work with. And I'm very comfortable with saying if those guys are willing to work and they're willing to listen, we'll do our part with helping them get better as players. And I think we have that with the recruits, the young guys that we have that we just brought in, the freshmen, and those guys are gym rats. They're in the gym all the time, so there's no question in my mind that those guys will get better as players.
Do you think they'll get early minutes early in the season?
I think so. I mean, that's still still haven't determined that, and you just never know. A lot of it is feel with the way the game is going, and you have to be cautious of throwing them out there against a seasoned veteran team like Carolina or whoever we play, and you don't want to throw them to the Sharks too soon. But, you know, the way I see it, I think those guys will be out on the court, and, you know, and like I always try to tell the guys, it's just basketball. So just go out there and compete and play hard and have fun. And I think good things always happen when you do that.
You were a local player, and you decided to stay home. Now, you see it all the time where local kids don't decide to stay home. You got 3 kids that were able to stay home. Mm-hmm. So now you get to see it from a recruiting side as well. As an assistant coach, how do you get local kids to stay home and want to play for Temple?
I guess you have to sell it. These guys go more on sizzle than reality. We have a fantastic program that's been great for years, starting with Harry Litwack on down, Coach Chaney, Fran Dunphy. A lot of these kids that's been in the city, they want to get out. They want to see different things. They want to see palm trees. They want to see a lot of grass and all of that. And some universities have more, some have less, but at the end of the day, you're going to school to be educated and play basketball. So that's all you need is classroom, books, and a basketball court. And at the end of the day, that's it. And you see a lot of the kids that end up leaving the city and going elsewhere, and then they end up back here. You know, and I'm saying at this university, but when they finish playing basketball, they come back here looking for work, looking for jobs. So why not stay home and become a star in your own town and build a fantastic program, continue to build a fantastic program up, and who knows where basketball will take you. But, you know, life after basketball can be really good for you.
It's remarkable the amount of coaches that you were surrounded by.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Ellerby,
Mm-hmm.
You got coached here by John Chaney,
Mm-hmm.
NBA by Larry Brown. I think you also spent 2 or 3 years under Phil Jackson as well in LA. What did those guys teach you?
Yeah, all of those guys were great in their own way. Where the one common thing I think that was really good about those guys was they were perfectionists. They really wanted you to really work on your skill set and get better at your skill set, but they made you think the game. They made you think the game. I wasn't a super athletic guy, so I had to be able to outthink my opponent out on the court. And I had some great times, and I had the pleasure of being able to sit alongside those guys and pick their brains and see why they did certain things. Like I would ask Coach Chaney all the time, why do we practice at 5:30 in the morning? And he said, well, my father made me get up and do paper routes at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to, how back in the day they would, deliver papers. I don't know if they still do it now. They would deliver papers. So he said, if I had to get up that early in the morning, I'm gonna make y'all get up early in the morning. So it was cool, but I think the real reason behind it was, we didn't have the facilities that they have now, and you really couldn't practice in the afternoon because you had to share it with volleyball, you had to share it with women's basketball. So now those guys have all these fantastic facilities with everything in it for them, so you can pick and choose when you want to, do your practice plan.
Dave Miller once told me a great story about Coach John Chaney. He was an assistant coach in college for a bunch of years and was in the pros and now an analyst out there in L.A. He said to a recruit that Chaney was going after, he said, I'm going to call you every day at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. And the recruit goes, well, why are you going to call me at 4:30 a.m. in the morning? And he goes, because that's when they practice at Temple. So I'll be talking to you. And then the next day the kid committed with Coach Dave Miller. So those morning practices, because as a college student, when you have to write a paper late at night, when you maybe go out, have some fun in your social life, so when you have to wake up at 4:30 a.m. and then you have to run a tough practice, that must have been difficult.
Well, it depends on where your mindset is at. Again, I go back to what I was saying before. You're here to be educated and you're here to play basketball. Now, I get the fact that, socializing comes with, going to college and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of people that you meet in college will probably be your friends for the rest of your life. But if you want to be a really good student, and you're going to put the time in, if you want to be a really good basketball player, you're going to put the time in and the preparation in. And I think that's what made us successful, is that we were all, on the same page with that, and we held, one another accountable for that. So I think for the 3 years that I've played, we might have had one guy late once. and that was it.
What happens when you're late to a John Chaney practice?
Coach made you run them steps all practice long.
Wow. It's like that's like a scene from Coach Carter or something like that. 7,000 push-ups and all that. Aaron McKie joins us in studio. Now, you're still really close with Larry Brown, and SMU is a tremendous basketball team, but they got their recent recruiting violations. Have you talked to Coach Brown about those things yet?
Well, you don't. Sometimes when you see guys, a lot of times that you have a close relationship with, sometimes you spend a lot of time talking about life outside of basketball, because, you think about it, you're talking about it all the time, sports and, all of those things. And I think that's something that, he look at. It's not really something he wants to openly, talk about, so that's something that I don't, if he brings up if he bring it up in conversation, then sure, I'm willing to sit and listen and talk about it and ask questions. But outside of that, bring it up and talk to him about it.
Let's get to the game on Friday night. It's a tough task going up against the best, if not the best teams in the country in UNC. No Marcus Page for them. When you scout this team, what do you see about UNC? Because it's going to be a difficult matchup for you guys. They
want to get out in transition and they want to score the ball. They're loaded. I mean, from top to bottom, they're heavy inside with Meeks and Bryce Johnson down there, and they got bigs that come off the bench, James and Hicks, and their perimeter is solid. All of those guys can handle the ball. All of those guys can shoot the ball. So we got to make sure we take good shots and have good floor balance and make sure we're getting back and back on transition defense. Really good team. I think they're preseason number one, so it's going to be a good test. We got to limit those guys. We can't allow them to get second chance opportunities, and we got to do our deal. We got to attack them guys. I think, for as good as they are, I think they do have some holes, in their team that we could take advantage of. But we have to be really solid, and we have to, be at our best against those guys.
Not only do you open the year against UNC in Annapolis, but then you're traveling to Puerto Rico. So a nice travel schedule for you. But what do you hope to find out about your team early with all that you have on your plate this early in the season with all that traveling?
I just want to see them compete. I want to see what they have in their belly, what kind of fire they got in their stomach, be competitors, and we'll see. We'll see where we at. And then, like I said, with those young guys, if they get a chance to play early on, then we know what we really got. But we're going to have to lean on our veteran guys, Jalen Bond, Quentin DeCozy, Devin Coleman, Josh Brown, all of those guys. We're going to have to lean on those guys early, and hopefully they can, do good by us.
On the way out here with the assistant coach of Temple University for the basketball team, that's Aaron McKie. I'd be so remiss if I didn't bring up Allen Iverson to you, and I'm sure you get this all the time. And we've talked about your relationship with Allen before, but that real special scene when it was his retirement press conference, and I even watched it just before the show, he got choked up, and he started crying when he mentioned your name and how much you meant to his career. Give me your best Allen Iverson story, because just so many things fascinate with me with Allen Iverson, and he's still beloved to this day in this city, as he should be.
Well, I just remember, and I always go back to this story. One day it was like a big, huge snowstorm here in Philadelphia, and we had a game. And, it was closing up the schools and the roads and all of that kind of stuff. So, we were talking back and forth, because we lived probably about 5 minutes from each other. And I was, he called me, "What you going to do, man? You're going to go, da, da, da." So we were saying, like, well, maybe they'll send somebody to pick us up. And so I said, "Allen, I'm about to get dressed, man. I'm going to just try to make my way down to the game or whatever." He's like, so, all right. He's like, why don't you come pick me up? So I was like, all right, cool. I said, as soon as I put my clothes on, I'll give you a call, and then I'll be on my way to pick you up. So I got dressed, put my clothes on, and I'm on my way to pick him up. So I'm driving, and I get about halfway to his house, and I get a phone call. I'm like, "Allen, what's up, man? You ready? I'll be there in about 2 minutes." He was like, "Oh, I'm at the arena already."
How'd he get there?
Yeah, that's classic Allen. So I would imagine the whole time we talking, he already in his car making his way down to the arena. So I get to his house, and, he's on his way to the arena. He gets to the arena. So I end up being late to the game. The game had started, and I got there probably a couple minutes into the first quarter. So that's just classic Allen, man.
A lot of people get confused by Allen, and we know how much he meant to this city, stepping over Tyronn Lue and all that stuff. People still talk about those moments to this day in this town, and people want the Sixers to be like that again, but they're a mess. They're so far away. That's another topic of conversation for another day. When you take a look at Allen, you were there with him for so many years, one of his closest friends on the team. Can you describe me who Allen Iverson was in your interactions with him?
I think he's very misunderstood, but he has the heart. He has a heart of gold. He'll take the shirt off his back and give it to anybody. But I think that was his biggest problem, was trying to be loyal to too many people, and it spreads you thin. I've been on the back of the bus with him and had intimate conversations with him. I've been on the plane with him and had intimate conversations with him. I just wish people could, you're judged nowadays, especially being in the spotlight as an entertainer or as an athlete. You're judged on one clip or one soundbite. And I think people need to take the time to really get to know somebody before they can place judgment on them. Sure, he had his share of things that happen in public or different things, but I don't think that's, the person that he really is. I know him. I've been around him for a long time. I think he's a wonderful individual, human being. And again, like I said, he has a heart of gold, huge heart. And with Allen, he's just a huge competitor. Anything in life he wants to compete with. So he's just a good person, just a good guy.
Temple basketball is back Friday, going up against UNC in Annapolis, Maryland. We'll broadcast the game right here on Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. Aaron McKie, appreciate you giving us a few minutes in studio today.
Thanks for having me, man.